This video is definitely late, like over a month late, but better late than never. This vlog is from my trip to Scotland with my family back in July. We went to a bunch of different places and it was a super fun time. I mean, it was super anxiety provoking for me, but I still had a good time on the days when I was feeling like I could. So yeah, that is your intro. I spent most of my time in the airport just trying not to have a panic attack and ended up having an internalized one instead, but then I took my anxiety meds when we got to the gate, so I knocked myself out on the plane pretty quickly. We landed in Edinburgh and went to go get our rental car, and this was the massive vehicle that my dad drove us around in for 10 days in Scotland. Kudos to him, that was very impressive. Because not only did he have to adapt to driving on a different side of the road and different road laws, but he also had to drive the biggest vehicle he has ever driven in his life. We started out our jet-lagged day by checking out a cool bookstore, and as you can see, my sister gets very excited at the promise of books.
She runs like Tina Belcher. 1870s. It's crazy.
They did have some new books, of course, but they also had books that were like hundreds of years old, which is crazy to me because I've been into a lot of bookstores and that is not something you can find in Canada, but I found it in a few different bookstores in Scotland.
Highland Cues.
We went to the National Museum of Scotland, which had the coolest layout with multiple levels all visible from the top floor.
What's freaky is that that's not even the biggest whale species. They're like blue whales are bigger, like that's crazy. It's like a baby TARDIS.
And this was us fighting the jet lag at lunch.
My poor skin has had this makeup on for almost 24 hours now. I feel so bad. I'm gonna have to do a really good cleanse tonight.
I know I'll just destroy any chances of me getting onto Scotland's time if I sleep before like 8 p.m. tonight. But my dad just brought me some fresh pizza, which is awesome because I didn't eat lunch when they did because I felt sick and I didn't like anything at the place and I was just overwhelmed and exhausted because I think I got maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep on the plane. That's about it. So apart from that, I've been up for over 24 hours now. I got all my makeup off, which was nice, and I'm gonna shower soon, but I'm gonna eat my pizza, and I've just been doing some editing. This is the video that's going up tomorrow, so I'm just getting it uploaded and then scheduled, and then I'm working on next week's video a bit because I will still be in Scotland when this goes up, so I need to edit it. Day 2 started out with a Harry Potter tour of Edinburgh where we got to see all the different places that J.K. Rowling wrote the books and the places that inspired them. Just a heads up, I don't support J.K. Rowling, but I do love Harry Potter. We actually had a bit of a trivia contest where we all pulled house cards, and my dad and I both got Ravenclaw, even though I'm a Gryffindor and he's a Slytherin, but we still did pretty well. Like on each of the different stops we would be asked questions. The Greyfriars Kirkyard Cemetery was actually really cool, but I didn't feel comfortable filming in there. It just didn't sit well with me. And this is Victoria Street, which is supposedly the inspiration for Diagon Alley, and honestly, it does feel like something out of a book. Like, all of the shops were super cute and colorful, and this is Museum Context, which is supposedly like the Harry Potter shop. After some lunch, we went to Edinburgh Castle, which was our first kind of real bit of history and learning on our trip. The outside was really picturesque. It did feel like something out of Outlander, even though I know they're not really in castles very often in Outlander, but yeah, you can see my mom loved the audio guide.
That church tower looks like it's all rotted or something. It's not, but it looks like it.
Have to wait because my dad and my brother are getting coffee because that's totally what we're here for. The outside of the castle was really picturesque, and then the inside was kind of interesting because people must have been really short back then at the time when this castle was in use, because I'm looking at these suits of armor and I'm thinking, I I could fit in that. And then I'm looking at this horse statue and I'm thinking, I really wish that my horse was that flexible. It would make the farrier appointments a lot easier. Day 3 started out at the Real Mary King's Close, which is a historical tour of an excavated close, which is basically like a long residential alley. It was an awesome tour, but I couldn't film it because it's underneath of a government building. But this was our tour guide. Her name was Freya. She was absolutely fantastic. And I had a lot of fun in the gift shop with all of the stuffed animals and puppets.
Anybody want to flee? Okay, wait, we gotta set the stage. Ready? Fleas on rats, fleas on rats.
I recognize that this only makes sense if you have watched the music video from the YouTube channel History Teachers on the Black Plague. So if you haven't, maybe, I think it's good. You should go watch it.
Mom's not here to appreciate me being funny. Rachel. Fleas on rats, fleas on rats.
Later on, we went back to Victoria Street so that I could go into museum context. We didn't before because you actually had to line up to be let in. And it's supposed to be the Harry Potter store, and it was cool, but I honestly didn't see much there that you couldn't find somewhere else for cheaper. And it's advertised as three floors of Harry Potter merchandise, but it's really 2 very small floors and then a photo op. Again, super cool. I think it's still worth popping in, but don't feel like that's the place to necessarily buy Harry Potter things because everything was super expensive. We went on a hike called Arthur's Seat, and apparently this is what happens when you take my sister away from camp for literally 2 days.
It's named from the caterpillar's resemblance to an elephant's trunk.
We tried out some of our old acro tricks, and I realized just how long it has been, because in this moment, I realized I fucked up.
Oh, nice one.
My brother's girlfriend was actually on crutches, and so she literally crawled halfway up this mountain, which honestly, girl power. And then my brother carried her the other half. And so the moral of the story here, ladies, is if he won't carry you up a mountain, he's not good enough for you. But the views were absolutely beautiful, including this view. And I know, this is the view that you wanted. On our way down the mountain, we actually met an Instagram famous dog, Alfie's Walks. He is 14 years old, and he does this walk every single day with his dad. The next day, after I had 2 panic attacks, we started our drive to the Isle of Skye, stopping first at Stirling Castle, where I used the nicest public washroom I have ever seen in my life. I had my own sink, multiple coat hooks, I had pads and tampons and a counter. I'm like, why aren't all public washrooms like this? This would solve the whole issue about gender neutral washrooms. Make them all gender neutral. Give me a whole little bathroom to myself.
Revolution. Now this is where we talk about one of the most famous characters in Scottish history, Charles Edward Stuart. And I always think that makes it sound like he was the butler or a servant. He wasn't, he was one of the highest lords of the land.
That's a very intricately made ceiling.
After our tour, I unfortunately had my 3rd panic attack of the day in a very painfully public place. Yeah, it was not my best day, definitely. I could have done without the very public, very aggressive panic attack, but oh well. Later at lunch, my sister informed me that if I was a soda, this would be it. And she's not wrong. This is me the morning after having 4 panic attacks and a mental breakdown all in one day. Not too shabby, I still look somewhat like a human being. Our first stop of the day was Dunvegan Castle. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. It didn't interest me a whole lot, to be honest, and I was starting to get antsy pretty quick into our walk around. So my dad and I walked around the gardens instead, and I loved the gardens. The flowers were beautiful. There are a lot of really nice flower photos and photos from the garden on my Instagram if you want to check that out. So apparently on Skye, the sheep and other livestock just wander. Like, they don't have pastures, they don't have fences keeping them on certain properties, they're just everywhere and they will walk across the road, and this is just normal. I don't know how I feel about it, to be completely honest. I think it's really cool, but also if I were a farmer, the anxiety I would have about not knowing exactly where my sheep were, I don't know, I think that would send me into a coma. This was a very, very windy hike, which when we got there, we were like, oh, this was supposed to be a lighthouse lookout, and we could not see a lighthouse since we were like, oh well, but then turns out it's actually over that mountain. We eventually found it, but... Definitely just feels like something out of a fantasy book or movie or something. I've seen bright pink dots and bright blue dots, and I think they're so that farmers know which sheep belong to who, because there are no fences keeping them on properties. Sometimes I see things like this and it really freaks me out, because it scares me that I live on the same planet that something like this can happen.
Like just the rock formation, you mean?
This was another very windy hike, and I made a very poor choice about the way that I wore my hair because it did absolutely nothing to keep it out of my face. And this view was definitely kind of giving Lord of the Rings and then the Lorax with all of the stumps. It was kind of creepy, but really beautiful. This was my favorite hike of the whole trip. Still can't really get over the fact that this is real. It all just looks like something out of a fantasy movie or book or something. Dedicated photographer that I am, I actually climbed over the ledge of the trail to get some good photos from the right angle. It is a good thing that my dad only went halfway on this hike because he probably would not have liked seeing me do that. He's a bit more safety conscious than I am. After 2 days on Skye, we headed to Fort William. Well, what we thought was going to be Fort William. That's where our Airbnb was supposed to be. That's where we thought it was. Turns out it was actually an hour away from Fort William. So that's our bad. Or I guess my mom's, technically, because she was the one that booked the Airbnb. But you know what? We're not going to hold it against her. She did a great job planning this whole trip. I spent the evening just chilling, reading in bed, and then my bed literally broke underneath of me. Turns out it wasn't my fault. The support boards literally just had nothing keeping them in place. But I will tell you, it was still very much a hit to the ego. My favorite part of the entire trip was getting to feed these Highland cows. I saw this little girl who ran out of food to feed the cows, and she asked her mom if she would buy her more, and her mom said no, so I broke my last potato in half and gave it to her, and the smile on her face honestly just made my day because I saw so much of myself in her. You know, just the little kid who's overly obsessed with animals. In the afternoon, most of my family wanted to go on this boat tour, but I really didn't. So my dad stayed back with me and we just spent the afternoon reading. And honestly, that was just really nice. It was a very nice change of pace. Our last day, we made the drive back to Edinburgh and just stayed at an Airbnb near the airport. And honestly, I was so tired. I was so ready to be home with my animals, but I did end up going to a nearby bookstore that was pretty cool. Like each alcove was a different genre, and it was pretty cool. But honestly, I was just tired. I just wanted to go home. All I could think about the entire time I was in the airport and on the airplane was, oh my god, I get to go pick up my dog in a few hours, I get to go get my dog, I get to go see my horse. And yeah, I was just so ready to be home. And after 10 days, reuniting with Padfoot was the best feeling in the entire world.